Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast, Season 3, Episode 8. This is it, folks, for 2022. This is going to be a big one. Well, not really. It's going to be pretty much the theme is stupid things people do. Honestly, that is the theme of this whole show. And I know this next part's going to blow your mind. But we're talking, people we talk about include Tiffy Boy. What would a Green Effect podcast be without making fun of Tiff? All right. My BFF. I sent him a Christmas card. Did I tell you? I didn't send him a Christmas card. No chance. We talk about fallout from that domestic stability buffer. Okay. BMO had to pull some money. Actually, didn't pull any strings at all. Just didn't get to buy something they wanted, the big shiny thing. We talk about the stress test. Okay. Office of the Superintendent for Financial Institutions did absolutely nothing. And we're going to talk about whether or not that's good, bad, indifferent, and the possible fallout from that. And then, of course, on the final topic of things that people do that are stupid, we talk about. We're going to talk about, we've affectionately called her, to be honest with you, I just forgot her name, but this is so much easier. The lady that we're going to call her the Disney Plus lady, okay? She canceled something on Us Nice Canadians called Real Return Bonds. If you think it's as exciting as it sounds, whoa, wait till you listen to the rest of the podcast, because Disney Plus lady, she tried to pull some wool over some people's eyes, and now they have seen. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast. Finance, life, business, and everything in between. And now, your host, Stephen Green.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-Christmas edition of the Green Effect Podcast. We are Season 3, Episode 8. And this is it. I don't think I've even done a TikTok yet this week. I'm like everyone else. I am checked out. Still getting things done for clients, of course, because, got to do the job. But honestly, I am just on cruise control until that big fat guy gets down that chimney and delivers me some presents. So, I don't know. It's a little different this year. I think it's just been such a whirlwind. I just... Probably like a lot of people out there, you just need a break and managing things as they come in right now. But yeah, throw in the comments. Are you guys, is everybody else here just checked out? So right now it's the 21st of December. The end is near. I am physically and mentally not here on the 23rd. I'll start making more TikToks and Instagram reels and Facebook things. Maybe I'll drop one next week, and other than that, it's the new year. So, I don't know. Hope you guys are all in the same boat as well. Anyway, without fail, don't worry, everybody. I've got so much stuff to talk about around, I don't know. Do we call this episode the stupid things people do? I don't know. Maybe. It seems like every episode is that. Let's talk about the stupid things people do. All right, you be the judge. So, if you recall last week, and I'm sure all of you listened to every single episode of the Green Effect Podcast, okay? Last week I talked about the domestic stability buffer, all right? Not as cool a thing as you think, okay? I'm not going to go through it all, but remember... basically OSFI, Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, basically the governing body that babysits banks, said all of you have to have more money on hand to back up your loan balance sheet, loans, mortgages, etc., in case of higher risk situations going forward. Way oversimplified. Go back to episode 7 and listen all about it. Fascinating stuff if it's what interests you. But some fallout, okay, to this DSB, we shall call it. You can tell I work for a bank because I take every term and make it into an acronym. Anyway, some fallout from this. So our good friends over at Bank of Montreal. Side note, just fun fact. It's Bank of Montreal. But why do we call them BMO? BMO. I actually know the answer to this, so I'm more asking everybody out there if you know. So they call them BMO instead of, you would think, BOM for Bank of Montreal. That's their stock ticker code on the stock market. So they just stuck with it and they just call themselves BMO. Anyway, fun fact, you're probably a better person now for knowing that. Anyway, moving on. Bank of Montreal. So they have a bit of an issue with this whole DSB issue. And, excuse me while I'm part of the Department of Redundancy department with my last statement there. So they were going to go out and buy a bank in the US. So you got to remember, Canadian banks always struggle to be big, we'll say, on the world stage. So they're always looking for new acquisitions. And the US is very popular for Canadian banks to buy down there, or for example, Scotia in the Caribbean, etc. Because it's easier to go buy a bank in the US than it is to merge anything in Canada. RBC is going through that right now with HSBC. They've only simply entered into an agreement, but it has to pass final approval by the finance minister. Okay? She's got more time these days because, she doesn't have her Disney Plus subscription anymore. Sorry, had to throw that in there. So they were going to buy the Bank of West. So some U.S. bank, I'm assuming in the West because they're called Bank of West. They actually had to cancel the deal because they needed the capital to try to make sure they were within this new DSB. So this is the first announcement of a bank not being able to do something like a purchase because they needed additional funds to support the domestic stability buffer. Very, very interesting. So banks have they've heard the message. They've got to adhere to it. They don't have a choice. Otherwise, they're going to have to pare back their lending again, as I talked about in episode 7. But this could be a sign of things to come. What else are banks going to do to raise capital? Interesting stuff. Moving on, again, on the topic of things, people doing stupid things in Canada. So, OSFI, okay, so again, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, they seem to be very busy doing not much lately, other than just bothering people. They announced that they are not changing the stress test. Let me explain the stress test and why it's so darn stressful. See what I did there? So here's what happens. Stress test, and over I think the last time they changed it was 2017, but they started to evolve the stress test where they said, look, mid 2010, so 2015, 2016, they basically said, look, rates are kind of stupid low. What happens when the rates inevitably go up? Because they're going up. We all knew that they were going up at some point. We didn't think it would go up as crazy as it did in a short period. No one predicted that, but we knew the rates were going to go up. So they basically said, look, if you want a mortgage, there's two numbers we have to be aware of. One is the contract rate. One is the qualifying rate. So before, again, I might have my timelines off, but before 2015, 2016, if you were getting a 2% interest rate, you qualified at 2%, right? And you'd have to be at the 5-year fix, but just keep it simple. So you get 2% on your contract rate, what you're actually paying. They qualify you as if the mortgage payment was at 2%. Fast forward again to 2015, 2016. There's a few other details, but we're just going to keep this simple. They basically said, look, we're going to make up a number, okay? And you either now have to qualify not at your contract rate, but at our qualifying rate. Basically saying, look, we're going to go with a higher rate to make sure you can afford it when and if rates inevitably go up. So, here's the example. Your contract rate, 2%, that's what you're actually going to pay. However, you have to qualify or be stress tested at either the rate that we've come up with as a qualifying rate, let's call it 5.25, or your contract rate plus 2%, whichever one is higher. So, since about, again, 2016, 2017, all mortgages in Canada, even though you're getting 2%, 1.5%, 1%, 3%, whatever, you have to qualify either the predetermined qualifying rate or your contract rate plus 2%, whichever one is higher. Okay, so that's the lesson on the stress test. So there was a lot of talk a couple of weeks ago. OSFI meets every year in December. We really have to stop doing this stuff before Christmas because it's not a good time to do stuff like this. Like someone at Bank of Canada or, the Fed or whatever, like seriously fix this. But they meet every year in December and they decide, what are we doing with the stress test? Okay, there's other things they look at, but among other things. So they basically said, there was a lot of talk about get rid of the stress test. The rates are so high anyway, and they're probably going to come down in the next 6 months or so. Get rid of the stress test. Let people try to get into the market. Because remember, no one's buying, no one's selling, because they're all holding on. Record immigration, builders aren't building. Yeah, rents are through the roof. I would argue rent amounts are probably the same, if not higher, than mortgage payments these days. Maybe. I might have that number off by a little bit, but not by much. So let's get rid of the stress test and let people buy at their contract rate again. Anyway, that was the talk and the hope. Not happening. They're like, forget it. There's no way in an economy right now that we're doing this. And they admitted, OSFI did, that they consulted with the Department of Finance. They even consulted, and this is where you lose credibility, folks. They even consulted with Tiffy boy over at Bank of Canada. Can you imagine how that phone call went? Tiff, bud, what's going on, brother? Yeah, it's OSFI. Yeah, it's OSFI. I know. Bud, I know your bonus was only in the millions. It's not a big deal, but I got a question for you. This stress test, do we get rid of it or do we keep it? What's your bet, bud? What are you doing? And you can just imagine Tiffy's response, right? Oh, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm sure that was his response right back to OSFI. Let's just admit it, right? And you know what OSFI's probably saying. Man, that guy is as crazy as Stephen Green says he is. Yeah, we're not touching that stress test because clearly the Bank of Canada doesn't have control. Anyway, OSFI checked with everybody. They checked with Department of Finance. They checked with the Bank of Canada. Again, credibility up in smoke there. And they OSFI basically said, look, this thing is messed up. Leave it. Why would we put Canadians in a situation where now we're going to let them buy houses at a reduced amount for qualification? Now, where this is going to go sideways, you would think, oh, great. No news, good news. Keep the rate higher and let people qualify at a higher rate to protect us, right? Not so much. Let's talk about what sort of a reaction this is going to have by them not changing something. Right from the get-go, right from the beginning of this whole stress test, there was constant argument. We can't just have a static stress test amount. Here's why. It's going to blow your mind. 60 to 70% of mortgage originations in the last, call it 2 years, year and a half, were variable rates. Why were they variable rates, you ask? Great question. The variable rate was lower than the fixed rate. So what ended up happening is everybody figured out you can qualify for more on a variable rate. Now, is this the lender's job to explain this to the client, saying, hey, you could be at risk if rates go up? You could argue that. However, when you got Tiffy boy up there saying, guys, rates are going to be low for years. Go make the biggest purchase of your life. We are here to help you. Explain to me how that's a risk necessarily. Because if you're going to be on here commenting that we all knew rates were going to go up 4 or 5% in the span of 7-8 months, you should be selling magic beans to people. Because there's no way. So we don't have a stress test that adjusts to the market in any way, shape, or form. I don't know the answer to how to make this better, but maybe meet more than once a year to really to analyze things. Okay. Where this also could make this worse is if people can't qualify on refis in particular, we might have non-traditional lenders, privates, Bs, etc., getting very busy with non-traditional lending because there's a lot of lenders that don't have to follow the stress test. Private lenders, credit unions. Okay, so we might have people going into products they shouldn't necessarily have. So by not moving the stress test, I get it. Let's not do anything and see what happens. Because again, this is messed up. But by doing nothing, we could be causing more issues. So I'd be interested to hear what you have to say in the comments. Because folks, I don't begin to know what the answer is relative to the stress test. Do you do it just for default insured or just conventional or vice versa or whatever? I don't know if there's a perfect answer, but what I do know, we have a housing market that has stalled. And this is not the answer. This is going to make it worse later when rates come down. People all of a sudden have these income raises maybe they've gotten, and we're going to be back into multiples and stuff. So love to hear what you say, what you think in the comments. Throw some down there, and I'll pick out which one is best. How about that? And let's take a quick time out to talk about our sponsor. Gotta pay the bills, folks. Top Consulting is the newest and greatest in your business growth plan. Top Consulting brings a combination of individual goals, accountability, and the most important thing always forgotten about, execution, and combines them with what your business goals are. It's not as simple as here's my goal, go get it. It's about what is the goal? Is it the right goal? What does the goal look like? How are we going to get to the end result? Top Consulting, we start at the end and work our way back, making sure we have proper milestones and execution timelines for you to get where you are right now with your business, right to that end goal that starts at the beginning. Top Consulting, make sure you visit topconsulting.ca where you can get some great information on our programs, complimentary webinars, and hey, don't take my word for it. Have a look at the homepage for real client testimonials. Oh, and just to make sure you really do go to the website, make sure you mention the Green Effect podcast and you get 25% off the introductory fit assessment. Go get them. All right. Again, we're going to keep going along this stupid things people do. So, I don't know what to think about this next one. So, there's these thing called bonds. And let me back up a second. So, Minister of Finance, I guess it was I can't remember exactly what it was. It was one of their annual meetings that they had. They seem to have a lot of these annual meetings. And around Christmas, by the way. Can we stop doing this in December? Like, really? It's like the Grinch that stole my money. So, they get together, and Minister of Finance, a Disney Plus girl, we'll call her, okay? She eliminated what we call real return bonds. Like, this is genius what she's done. Unfortunately, everyone found out she did it, and now we got some problems. So a few weeks ago, So there's two. Let me back up. There's two types of bonds that the Canadian government issues. So for those of you who are learning about bonds, bonds are basically they're basically a loan, an IOU. So the bank, you go and buy a Bank of Canada bond, and you're basically giving the bank $100 for them to spend on God knows what, to be honest with you. But you give them $100 and they say, okay, great, thanks for the $100. We're going to pay you 3% interest or 2 or whatever. And we're going to use your money for, again, who knows what. At the end of your X term, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, we'll pay you your interest of 3% or whatever it is. Okay. These are really popular in the early 2000s, late 90s. I remember we used to have clients come into the bank and they wanted, 2 or 3 $500 bonds to give their kids or whatever. Okay. So fantastic. What has ended up happening is one of the type of bonds, and I said they have 2, I'm sure they have more, but one of the type of bonds is called a real return bond. Okay. And what that is they basically take that $100 you gave them and they will increase, not the interest, but they'll increase the value of the bond by the amount of inflation. And what they've decided to do, and I know why, is they've said, we're getting rid of those. Okay, so, let's say inflation is 8%. Maybe they got to add $8. So now it's a $108 bond, and you're getting your 3% interest on that $108, just as an example. And again, I'm not the economics degree guy. I'm sure there's things I'm missing here, but just really simply put. Anyway, she goes ahead, Disney Plus lady, and she says, we're not giving out those bonds anymore. We're canceling the program because they're really not very popular. Yeah, they're popular. Not a lot of people use them. From what I understand, a lot of bond managers use them. But let's just admit what's really happening here. Okay? Your inflation's out of control. You guys have no money to begin with. So, yeah, it's probably not a good idea to be giving out bonds that you're going to have to pay the interest on and the inflation that your Bank of Canada, run by, drumroll please, Tiffy boy, can't get their shit together. Okay, so this has caused a lot of uproar, as uproar gets with fund managers and investors, where they're basically calling bullshit on this and saying, no. Even though you've admitted, Disney Plus lady, that you consulted with marketing firms and all these other people, and it's just not very popular, so we're going to get rid of it. They're calling bullshit, and they're saying, there's no way. There's no way. So I don't know if they're going to reverse their decision, but this has been very fascinating to follow because it's one of those things where if it was a private institution and this happened, whatever. It is what it is. But it's the government, and it's probably how it was positioned. If they came out and said, Tiffy boy ain't got no control over nothing, people might accept that. But instead they come out and they say, well, it's not very popular, so we're not going to keep it. You don't really want this. Go buy something else, right? That raises a Spockian eyebrow. We're like, what's behind the first curtain of statement? Notice how I didn't say other little things there. So let's see what happens with this. It's really interesting it's interesting to see government and government agencies, if I can bring my whole podcast full circle, doing stupid things and how they're getting caught with this and how people are asking questions about it. Anyway, friends, this is my last podcast of 2022. If you would like to reward me, Stephen Green, host of the Green Effect podcast, share, like, follow, 5-star review wherever it is you're listening to this podcast. Again, like and follow. That would be an amazing gift for you to give me. Other than that, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, have an incredible holiday, be safe, please, and we will see you again next year. Come on, you had to know that joke was coming. No? All right, signing off for this year. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Green Effect Podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Google Play so you catch the next episode. And don't forget to leave a review. Much appreciated.